There are certain believers we were warned about in the occult. Not pastors on stages, not people shouting prayers for hours, not those wearing religious titles. I'm talking about a specific kind of Christian that made seasoned witches fall silent, that caused rituals to fail without explanation, and that forced demons to retreat without a fight. When I was deep in witchcraft, we had manuals, mentors, and rankings. We knew who was spiritually weak. We knew who was open, and we absolutely knew who to avoid. There was a category written in red ink in our circles, believers who disrupted assignments simply by existing. I didn't understand it at first. These people didn't look powerful. They didn't advertise their faith. They didn't argue theology online. But whenever a curse was sent toward them, something strange happened. The ritual would backfire. The spirits would refuse to operate. Sometimes the witch performing it would fall sick, confused, or spiritually blind for days. That's when I started asking dangerous questions. Why them? What made them different? What authority were they operating under that bypassed all our spiritual laws? I want you to hear this clearly. The enemy is not afraid of Christians in general. He studies them, he predicts them, he exploits patterns, but there is a remnant, a specific type of believer that does something the enemy cannot simulate, counterfeit, or control. And if you are one of them, or if you're becoming one of them, you've probably noticed the resistance increase lately. Strange delays, unusual attacks, heightened pressure without explanation. That's not coincidence. That's recognition. In this video, I'm going to expose who these believers really are, why the enemy fears them, and how witchcraft systems collapse in their presence. This is not theory, this is testimony, and some of you are about to realize why hell has been so loud around you lately. Let me break a dangerous myth. Loud prayer does not terrify demons. Long prayer does not terrify demons. Emotional prayer does not terrify demons. We used to monitor prayer environments all the time. Noise without alignment is just sound. In occult systems, authority is everything. Demons don't respond to words, they respond to position. And most believers pray from desperation, not dominion. They beg for what they already have access to. They ask permission for what was already granted at the cross. We were never afraid of Christians who only knew how to react. We feared believers who understood timing, authority, and spiritual posture. You see, witchcraft operates on legal grounds. Every attack needs access. Every assignment needs an opening. Sin patterns, fear cycles, trauma wounds, these are contracts. When a believer lives emotionally unhealed and spiritually unaware, they are legally loud but spiritually open. But the believers that terrified us, they didn't give the enemy material to work with, no bitterness to amplify, no pride to leverage, no hidden compromise to exploit. And here's the part that will shock you. Many of them didn't even know how dangerous they were to hell. They just lived surrendered, obedient, quietly aligned. Demons hate alignment more than prayer, because alignment removes legal access, and when legal access is gone, power collapses. In witchcraft, we call it silent authority, power that doesn't need to perform. These believers didn't chase manifestations. Manifestations followed them. They understood identity, not religious identity, but spiritual placement. They didn't say, I hope God hears me. They moved as if heaven already backed them. Here's what we observed. When these believers entered a space, atmospheres shifted. Conversations changed. Plans stalled. People felt uncomfortable without knowing why. That's not charisma. That's spiritual government. Demons recognize rank faster than humans do. And these believers carried something unmistakable: submission to God without negotiation. Let me be very clear. Partial obedience creates partial authority. Full surrender produces territorial authority. These believers didn't flirt with sin and then pray against consequences. They closed doors permanently. They broke agreements instead of managing symptoms. And once those doors closed, witchcraft had nowhere to land. This is why the enemy works overtime to keep believers distracted, offended, exhausted, and divided. Because a focused, surrendered believer is not manageable. The enemy doesn't fear gifts, he fears governance. Some of you are confused because attacks didn't stop. When you got closer to God, they intensified. That's because the enemy doesn't fight what he already owns. When you start shifting from survival faith to authority faith, alarms go off. When your prayer life becomes consistent, when your repentance becomes deep, when your obedience becomes non-negotiable, you are marked as a threat. In the occult, we escalate pressure to force compromise, delay blessings, stir conflict, trigger old wounds. Anything to pull you back into emotional reaction instead of spiritual command. But here's the truth. Resistance is confirmation. If you were powerless, you'd be ignored. If you were harmless, you'd be comfortable. The reason hell is nervous is because you are becoming the kind of believer that doesn't just pray, you shift territories. And territories matter more than moments. After years of observation, rituals, and failures, we identified the common trait. It wasn't fasting frequency. It wasn't Bible knowledge. It was intimacy without performance. These believers didn't use God. They walked with Him. They didn't pray to impress heaven. They listened. They obeyed quickly. They repented immediately. They forgave completely. That terrifies the enemy because intimacy produces clarity. And clarity removes deception. Witchcraft thrives in confusion. Demons thrive in emotional chaos. But when a believer lives anchored, emotionally healed, spiritually aligned, and obedient, there is no entry point. This is why the enemy fights your quiet time more than your public worship. Why distractions hit hardest when you're alone with God. Why fatigue shows up when intimacy deepens. Because intimacy turns believers into carriers, not visitors. And carriers don't need permission to change environments. Let me give you signs. Not fear signs, confirmation signs. You feel conviction faster than before. You can't tolerate compromise anymore. Old habits feel heavy instead of comforting. Your discernment sharpens. You sense things before they happen. You withdraw from environments that once energized you. People misunderstand your silence. Some relationships fall away without drama. And spiritually, prayer feels less emotional but more authoritative. You stop begging. You start declaring. That's not dryness, that's maturity. And if you're experiencing unusual resistance right now, understand this. You are being recognized in the spirit. The enemy isn't trying to stop you from believing. He's trying to stop you from becoming dangerous. But it's too late. You're already waking up. We are entering a season where casual Christianity will collapse. Only aligned believers will stand. The enemy already knows who you are becoming. The question is, do you? You were never meant to be loud. You were meant to be lethal to darkness. If this message stirred something in you, that's recognition. Heaven confirming what hell already knows. You are not under attack because you're weak. You're under pressure because you're dangerous. And once you fully step into who God designed you to be, witchcraft won't chase you anymore. It will avoid you because these believers, they terrify the enemy